Okay, we're live. Today is Thursday, November 12th, and this is our weekly development check-in. So we're going to go around and do introductions popcorn style. I'll start. My name is Jen Lampton, joining from Oakland, California, and I'm excited to hear about all of the exciting things in last week's release. Tim, do you want to go next?
Sure. My name is Tim Erickson, St. Paul Tim, coming to you from Deerwood, Minnesota. I mentioned last week that deer hunting had started up here in Deerwood, and I'm still doing okay. So, and the deer are still out there. So, been very busy lately, so I haven't had as much time to work on backdrop issues the last couple weeks. My big things right now are trying to work on some conference distribution stuff. I have in the telemetry initiative, and that's it. Greg, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name is Greg. I'm usually in Australia, but now joining from Greece. Interested in everything around backdrop, especially user experience. And the issue that I was advocating for was recently merged, so I am now free, if I recall correctly, to work on another issue. So I think I'm probably going to be working on the one about merging the update pages. Olaf?
Yeah, I'm Olaf from Hamburg in Germany, and also hadn't much time lately, but now I'm checking in again. And for example, I'm doing a German community site for Backdrop, and also work for my clients in Backdrop and so on. Phil?
Hey, I'm Phil Ward with out of Wichita, Kansas, and mainly just kind of here to be a fly on the wall today, kind of see what you guys have to talk about. And, you know, if I could throw out any ideas, then I'll be, willing to do that. But otherwise, just kind of here to see how the meeting goes. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Phil. And that's awesome. You're from Kansas. I'm also a Kansan, so originally. But now I'm in Oakland, California, and I'm doing, this week we got 117.2 out, and like others, I'm excited to report the progress on that and turn towards these 118 issues. So that's it for me. I think that's everyone. Jen, you want to take it back over?
Sure. So I wasn't here last week, but I did notice that there are two new contributed project updates this week. UberCart Who Bought What has a module release, and CSV Export is a new module release. So assuming you guys covered all of last week, but there are a handful that came out on November 4th as well. All right, Nate, you want to jump into 117.2?
Yeah, 117.2. As we talked about last week, we did the release process on Sunday. So a couple of us got together to do the 117.2 release, which was very well managed. We had all kinds of great things happening. Big thanks to BW Panda. I sat down on, I should have done this earlier, but I sat down on Sunday morning to look through the RTBC queue, and it was empty because BW Panda had already been through it. So that was a really pleasant, excellent surprise. And some of the issues that we have been talking about for several weeks have been merged into that, including the transliteration of URLs doesn't expect the site default language, issue 2637. That got fixed and merged in. The MySQL 8 support, we had talked about wanting to get that out into the next bug fix release and not in a security release to make it so that it's available for everybody. But if there are any last issues with it, they could go back to the previous version without having a security issue, security nag.
In 118, so people could test it before 118 was out.
It was in the 1.x branch for 3 weeks, and cool. We didn't have any additional updates or issues from anyone, and it had 5 different confirmations that it was working. So with all of that, we're just like, okay, let's get it in. So that's great because it means that the latest release of Backdrop, the current stable version, now runs out of the box on like CentOS, the newest versions of CentOS and Red Hat, which use MySQL 8.
So Nate, I don't know if this is the right time to, but there is it may have caused an issue, although I'm not sure if the problem, if you haven't seen it yet, there's an issue about CiviCRM. It's issue 4745. So it broke somebody's CiviCRM integration, and they made a comment that the problem might be the sort of hacky solution for the views integration in CiviCRM, but the only reason I'm raising it is because it might be related to this MySQL 8 thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want someone like yourself to be aware of it in case there are other implications. I don't know if there are. But.
Very interesting. Yeah, I think interesting. Oh, I had not seen this, so I'll take a look at it.
Sure.
That is interesting. I saw something just similar to this that it looks like the quoting that we have, we quote around everything, and it looks like it might be quoting around an empty string, making it so it's an empty table name. And I saw that happen in one of the implementations, but I fixed it in the core version, but I'm not sure. Maybe it's like you say, some kind of hacky thing that they're doing that the auto table escaping is now causing an issue. Yeah, I'll take a look.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's issue 4745. Great. Let's see. And also, this isn't exactly something new that is in 117.2, but Tugboat QA, we're now using them for pull request sandboxes. The issue is 4351. And it does appear that right now we get 2 sandboxes on every pull request, one on ZenCI and one on Tugboat. That's totally fine for the time being. I think we're going to likely slowly move away from the ZenCI sandboxes.
I wasn't here last week. How did the conversation go with Gore?
We didn't have one yet.
So that's kind of it. We haven't had one. We haven't had a conversation with Gore, but we haven't stopped using ZenCI. Just that we also now have Tugboat currently.
We have stopped using ZenCI. We just have it still there. Yeah. Oops.
Yeah, and the tests are still using ZenCI. We just switched the sandboxes, right? So we still need the tests there. Yeah.
Yeah, but there are some like issues with the testing infrastructure too that we need to get on newer versions of PHP. Right now we're still running PHP 7, which isn't even an officially supported version anymore. Like we need to get that updated. And so, yeah, I'd like to pursue looking into GitHub Actions for that, just because it'll give us a lot more control over it, and it's integrated into GitHub now.
Even though it's going to be like 100 times slower.
Well, I think we need to figure that out, like exactly how fast the speed of it is. A lot of the reasons why Backdrop's tests are so much faster than Drupal's actually have to do with optimizations that Gore made to like the install profiles, for example.
I think that's it. I think it's because Gore's server can run like 6 different updates at the same time, or 6 different tests at the same time. It's like split across multiple threads, and I don't think GitHub Actions can do that.
Well, I think that we need to test and see like what the difference is. We honestly never really looked at any of other CI providers after Gore made his optimizations, because it was so clear at the time.
Well, I mean, we moved off of Travis because it was painfully slow, right? So we were comparing it to that, and I have a feeling GitHub Actions is probably
comparable.
Yeah, comparable to Travis, but we'll see. Maybe they have like a paid plan or something that we could get as a open source project where we can get access to multiple threads. And
yeah, and one of the key issues with Travis is that we literally were running out of time, like the 45-minute limit. That was really why we moved off of it. Although having the tests run in 5 minutes instead of an hour and a half was definitely a real improvement in our performance. But most of that was, again, like that was in code improvements plus faster servers. So anyway, yeah, so we have those pull request sandboxes. Jen, the conversation with Gore is just something that we haven't been, nobody's really volunteered to just have that discussion.
Yeah,
you're-
it's just we because he's been giving us this like amazing free service for forever. It's something that it would be really nice to be able to say thank you rather than just like kicking him out the door and having him notice by one day showing up and looking at anything and be like, oh my God, why are they doing this?
Yeah.
It seems really rude that went live without having that conversation with him first.
I agree. Let's see. Text update for admin block info. This shouldn't be in here. This is not in this one. Okay, but other than those issues that we talk about every week, there were 31 total fixes in this release, which was super cool. So that was like a really good collection of fixes that went out in 117.2. Anything else you guys want to mention about the new release? Okay. Well, 117.3 is the next bug fix release. And we still have lots of bugs to potentially tackle. Tim just noted that CiviCRM issue and put that in here for future weeks to continue discussing. Issue is 4745.
Are we allowed to mention that 117.3 is coming out next Wednesday?
Well, I guess we just did. I don't think that because there's. Do you want to say more about that?
I don't know. Are we allowed to say more?
There's no PSA, is there?
There's
No.
no
Let's just move
PSA.
on. There is a
Yeah.
security release window in November.
Okay.
Everyone
That's
knows.
what we are allowed to say.
Yeah.
So it's good that we got 117.2 out. And got in all of those fixes with not
Yep.
relating to a security release.
Yep.
Let's see. Tim, you also mentioned before the meeting started that the Docker image, we're having some issues with it. It needs to be updated for the latest release is one problem, that we have it as one of the tasks every time we make a new release.
Right.
But the last several releases, no one has been updating the Docker image because no one within the core development team is actively using it. So we need a volunteer or someone that we can consistently depend upon to update that Docker image. But I looked in the issue queue and I couldn't find an issue. Is it
4747.
4747?
Yeah, in the regular issue queue. There is one in the Docker issue queue too, but that was part of my point, is that I don't know if anybody's looking there. So I watch most of the repos and I was not watching that one. So I didn't even notice that one come in.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Scott C. Mace, for opening that issue.
Yes. And Scott C. Mace has also recently joined Zulip, so we can try to chat with him there if we need to.
He opened a few blog posts, one or two as well. So they started testing recently.
But yeah, my concern, it seems like I'd like to quickly understand what's going on here, because that our repo doesn't actually contain backdrop itself. We actually have a repo for a Docker. But I looked at that and there doesn't seem to be backdrop in it. Is that just like some config files or?
So that's what we changed, and then Docker pulled that information. That's as far as I know. Last time that I saw that.
So does that have to be updated, or should that be updated
Yes.
every release?
Yes, it should.
I think it's some kind of script that says like download backdrop version 117.2.
Yes.
And if it doesn't say 117.2, then you get an old version of backdrop.
Yeah. So I think you need to update the version and the commit hash. That's it.
In the issues GitHub repository, there's a procedures document for how to update the Docker stuff. I did it for a while, but I wasn't sure anyone was using it. And then I think someone else offered to do it, and then they stopped doing it, and I didn't start doing it again.
Sure.
But the process for updating is pretty straightforward. We just like update our repository and then notify Docker that the version number is changed by submitting a pull request, and then someone at Docker merges it into their master. So it's a couple of lines change every time. It's just, another to-do item when a core release comes out.
Do we have it as a list in the release template? We do.
Yeah, and it always is assigned to question mark, question mark, question mark.
Yes.
So that's the only thing we have to do though is update the backdrop ops / backdrop - Docker.
There's
Well,
two
and
things.
then
We update our thing and merge the fix, and then we open a pull request against
Right.
Docker, and then
That's right.
we go from there.
Yeah. So I think it was me that I was doing that. I've done that in the past. And looking at the procedure, I sort of like created that document. So yeah, it was probably me that stopped doing it. Because I'm also not using Docker.
Although it looks like the complaint that was registered is actually that it's not working rather than it just wasn't up to date. So
Right.
there could be some deeper issue here.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that issue has to do with this repo at all, but it just raised that question for me.
Yeah, and I think I've been updating it for a really long time without ever using it. I was just
Mhm.
following the instructions on how to update it, so I have no idea if it has ever
Right.
worked.
Okay.
So something
Might
we
be worth mentioning that if you want to use Backdrop with Docker, you can use Lando or DDEV, both of which have excellent support for Backdrop.
yeah, but if you
That might
you
be.
can run Lando on your production server.
Right. I think this person is using it on a server.
Yeah.
Got it. All right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that we just need to check in on that issue 4747, since this is the first that some of us have heard of it.
Yep.
All right, let's see. Next up is a set of issues that I don't think there's many updates on. There's some terminology updates, Jen, that you were working on for the administrative label and description on blocks within layouts, issue 4600. Looks like we've been going back and forth on string terminology there. It's currently marked needs review. Let's see. Site is stuck in maintenance mode when updating modules, issue 3956. Also another issue that has been sitting in a needs review state. I don't think we have any updates on that one.
Whoa, wait a second. This is a GitHub issue, a new one or an old one?
No, it's an old one.
Oh, because there's somebody's having a problem in on the forum right now with that issue, and I didn't
Yeah.
know that this was an outstanding, or at least I'd forgotten. I probably should have known. Okay.
Yeah, when you run, if you run the UI based module updater, the site can get stuck in offline mode after running the updates. But then you can turn it back off. It's just that it's supposed to turn itself back off after it's done updating.
Okay. Well, I don't. So yeah, somebody just on Wednesday. So just yesterday. Well, this is the same the same one that I think is having the problems with the CVCRM. I think it's that same person. Anyways, okay. Well, I'll point them at this issue because I don't know if I was aware of that. Thanks.
Okay, next up is setting a reasonable max input vars PHP setting. It's issue 3824. There's a working pull request there that makes suggestions of everything. BW Panda looked at it not too long ago. And there was kind of an interesting question there about, like, a lot of people have never actually encountered this as being a problem until they do, and then it's a big problem. And I'll ask a question here just to solicit some live feedback. That the main area that this problem usually occurs is on the permissions page when you have lots of permissions and lots of roles.
And also on the menus page where they have the checkboxes.
On any node form where you have a multiple value field, there's like a lot of scenarios. They're all documented in the ticket there.
Yeah, paragraphs as well. Paragraphs. Yeah, multiple things. Yeah. So this is plaguing the larger sites in GovCMS platform. We've had multiple people complaining about that. The issue with the menu management page is solved by the big menu module, which sort of like loads partially the menus, and then in an Ajax way loads the rest of it as you edit it. But fixing, yeah, but the permissions thing is just the more modules people enable and the more rows they have, it sort of like exponentially multiplies the amount of checkboxes on the pages. So these are the most frequent ones, but there are others.
So the pull request, I believe, throws a warning right on the status report, so it won't be a red dot; it'll be the yellow dot.
Yeah.
Maybe the question that I was going to throw out there, now that you guys have filled me in a little bit more on the number of situations it might not be valid, was maybe we should throw that error, like we should do some checking to see if your site is likely to be affected by this problem and then throw the status report error. But determining whether or not your site is going to be affected sounds like there's a lot more circumstances than I would have guessed. Like I was going to say the permissions page, you could calculate how many checkboxes are going to be on the page, number of roles times number of permissions, you're going to have a problem.
But I think it's pretty easy to check if you're on Apache. Right? And
well, if you're on Apache, then yeah, you won't get this warning at all because the htaccess file will set it for you.
Right. Yeah. So we could make sure that, and I think the majority of our users are probably on Apache. So we can make sure that this annoyance with the like yellow message won't show up if you're on Apache. So it won't bother all the people who like, you know, don't care about it. But if you're not on Apache, that's when it like is going to be your responsibility to fix the issue. And so I think that would be a really easy limit to put around that notice.
Yeah, well, it's already, I mean, yeah, it's almost already the case because if you're running Apache, then the notice isn't going to bother you because it's going to be fixed right away. So maybe that's like, maybe we're making too big a deal about this because it's like, for most people, it's not going to be a problem. Although, every backdrop site that's out there, when they update, they probably won't update their htaccess file, even though we'll probably say it that you should update the htaccess file. It's just not in the usual pattern, and it's not handled in automatic updates, those sorts of things.
On a platform with 400 sites, only 5 are affected. So it's a very small percentage, but when it happens, it's really annoying, and it's usually the high profile sites, like larger sites, customers which are more important, I should say. So yeah, and because our target audience are smaller sites, I guess, maybe that's why we don't have many complaints, but yeah, we don't want to.
I also feel like when it happens, you have no idea why your form isn't submitting. And so for the smaller sites, it's like a bigger problem because like you're less capable of understanding that there is an issue. You'll just be like, oh, well, sometimes when I submit this form, my menu items don't save, and you just move on with your life, or like understanding like backdrop's broken on this page. So yeah, I don't know. I have like maybe 15 or 20 backdrop sites, and I'd say I've run into it 25% of the time. And most of my sites are not super complicated, but all of them usually have one thing where it's either like a lot of taxonomy terms or a really big menu or one page with a multi-value field on it, or there's always like one of those 8 things they happen to have stumbled across. And I'm like, why does this figure out? And it's the same thing, even though I know this is a problem, it still takes me like half an hour to find out like why this node form won't save.
But isn't there, Jen, isn't there a message right now?
Nope, there's nothing. So that's the problem with this. With this error is that it's a completely silent failure. Everything continues to work as though it normally worked, although it doesn't. It's just like, here's half your form. So yeah.
It's strange because I coded it also once with the web form conditionals, like hundreds of conditionals. And I don't know how I figured it out because when there's no message and
well, there's no message in the UI, but if you look at the server logs, there's a message about reaching the limit.
Bar succeeded.
Might be.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that something that's possible to actually? Can you figure that out and show that as an error? Is it possible to program for that?
No.
Interesting. Well, you could. Yeah. You could figure out how many values came over in post, and if that number of values equaled the number of the max input, then you could throw an error. I mean that because what happens right now is that like the form token and stuff like that just doesn't come across, like, and so the form just doesn't save hopefully. Sometimes you're really unlucky and
It looks like it saved half of
stuff-
it, yeah.
stuff saves. Yeah.
Or maybe, because I mean to remember that there was a message. Maybe Webform provides it because they know that, with big web forms, it could be a problem. So we could have a look at Webform, how they handle it.
There's like a
Because
special tag in the Drupal issue queue for all of the issues that have ever been created that are a result of this problem. There's like a special issue tag. And I think that there are a couple of contrib modules that have come out with their own workaround for it. It would
Solution.
not surprise me if Webform was one of them, because that's a likely candidate to run into this problem.
Yeah, what Phil and Nate said might be a possible thing, but I don't know. I don't know what the overhead would be for because it will need to happen to every submission, right?
Yeah. Here's another question. So the issue. So I haven't dove into the issue itself, but it looks like somebody wants to increase the vars in the htaccess. Is that kind of what this issue is?
Yep, that's what it does.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what about putting something on the status page that
Yeah.
references the vars and basically says, hey, in order to seamlessly run this, we recommend a minimum of 1,000.
That's what it does.
Or
That's what it
something.
does.
Okay.
The thing is, there are a handful of people who are like, my site is never going to run into this problem. Why do I have a warning on my status report saying that one day I might hit this problem? So we're trying to figure out a way to make that warning only show up for people that, like, when they hit the problem or are likely to hit the problem or something.
Yeah. So actually coding for it. Coding for it would be a pain to try and do that on a check for every single time. That one's a good question.
Yeah,
All right.
we're not really even sure if we've overblown it or not. Like, is a
Yeah.
warning that bad? I don't. It's hard to say.
Okay.
Anyways, but that is basically sitting there. The pull request does exactly what you described, Philip. It adds a warning to the status report, and it changes the htaccess file that's in the out of box to fix the max input vars for people running Backdrop on Apache. But existing sites probably won't get that change, definitely not automatically. And but new sites hopefully won't be affected in any way.
Okay. I have run into that myself over the years, so I can relate to what's going on there.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
might, for someone that's had it happen, they might appreciate being told in a warning,
Right.
like, oh yeah, I have to make this change. I'm glad
Yep.
that this reminded me of it because I hate it when that happens. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and the message is like it also links to the API page where it explains how things are, because it's not only Apache. People with Nginx, like, we don't do anything with people running on Nginx because it doesn't work with htaccess. They have to do configuration on their own. But I think that the page that we have doesn't explain how to do it on Nginx. So maybe, or if there's a way. But yeah, that's independent from the pull request. Like, we can update that page to mention what people on Nginx can do if they have that issue.
Well, let's move on. We've only got a little bit
Yeah.
of time left. These next 5 issues, we don't have any updates on. So unless someone has something in particular they would like to note about them, removing the block title for the search box, issue 3476, it needs review. There's a problem with the view's OR behavior when ORing together multiple conditions, issue 3415, also needs review. Removing blacklist and whitelist terminology from core, issue 4441, needs work. Same with master slave terminology, removing that from core, issue 4451, also needs work. So all of those haven't had any updates. And also automated code checks with PHPCS, issue 3213. Also no updates there, although I keep wanting to come back to that one as something that would be very helpful for us. So yeah, all of those are things that could use some eyeballs. Let's move on to 118. 118 is the next minor version of Backdrop. It will be coming out January 15th with feature freeze on January 1st. We've had some updates this week. The link subtoken for user tokens, issue 4584, a real simple addition that adds a new token to the user account entities. Gregory, you were the advocate for that. Can you give us an update?
Yeah, so that one was merged, as I said. So I can now move on to the next, wasn't it? Yes. So I can move on to the next feature for 118. That was a pretty trivial addition. Like, it was a few lines of code. We just needed, we had a few terminology or lingo usage. I think it was the fact that it was mentioned, instead of mentioning username, we said login name or something like that. So we agreed on that. We fixed it. It was merged. All good.
Yeah, and you haven't, I looked at the 118 milestone. You haven't put in your new advocating issue yet, which is consolidating the available updates, I think, into one single page.
So my attention was drawn, with the help of others in the queue, in some smaller tasks that are for bug fix releases, which I've left there for like a few months. So I started looking at those, and then I know why they were left there, because I got into the same rabbit holes, but it's good. I like that. So I'll finish with that, wrap it up maybe this or next week, and then I'll move on to that issue. I hope to get it. No, I'll push myself to get it in for 118, because it's one of the long-standing issues. I want to see it fixed.
All right. Next up is WebP support, a new image format. It's issue 4509. Indigo Zella is the advocate for that. Phil, since you're here, thank you for doing the user testing and marking works for me.
Sure.
Indigo Zella marked it as still needing code review. However, so that seems to be the remaining test there. I think they were hoping for, in particular, HerbDuel or let's see, HerbDuel or Gregory to take a look at that, because they'd already done a review once before.
Yep.
Phil, did you have anything that you want to add about that issue, since you took a look at it recently?
I think the long-term goal is to be able to convert, for example, upload a JPEG, and we'll save the JPEG, but then also convert over to WebP. I think that's kind of what Indigo was saying his long-term goal is. But outside of that, I was kind of thinking about it. I probably need to go ahead and blow my sandbox away, bring in core, do some testing on it again, and then add in the patches and make sure that my testing is legit. But from what I could tell, I didn't get any errors or nothing. It just works the way I would expect it to work. So I don't think I have any other issues on that.
Did we see Indigo Zella posted an update in Zulip today on that issue? So I don't know if
muted.
Oh,
Nate was trying to say something and he's muted.
okay.
Oh,
Anyway.
I was trying to say something? No, I wasn't. Sorry.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to draw attention that there is an update in on the WebP support issue in Zulip. It's so I don't know if I should read it quick. Just says,
Yeah, please.
okay, some update.
I probably need to.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I probably need to get with him on that. I think my only issue with trying to kind of do the automated thing is just the UX. Install the image action and deal with creating an image style that handles all of that. I don't like that from a UX workflow. So I don't know if I just need to get with him and try and figure out a better, more automated approach to doing doing the WebP. And honestly, WebP is kind of, I guess, in my back pocket too. It's something that I have wished for a very, very long time that Drupal handled, and it just never really went anywhere. And so, the fact that he's trying to get this going, it's kind of near to me as well. So I'll do what I can to help him out and try and get this figured out from a UX of how I would want it to work. If this thing's to work the way I wanted it to, I'll try to, I guess, get my input on that. So.
So for the reference, I believe Indigozilla is a her.
It's a she.
Yeah, it's a she.
Here
Yeah.
they-
Okay.
It's set for, yeah, okay. That's probably all. I think it's basically, it sounds to me like it's still marked as works for me, and yeah. I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure we noted that, but I think Phil got it covered.
All right. Next up, Upgrade UI. Jen, you were taking a look at this issue of making it possible to move from a Drupal 7 site to a backdrop site through a user interface of some kind that wasn't just update.php. Has there been any updates on that initiative? Sorry, that issue. Okay. The issue is 4345. Yeah, this is kind of like a hypothetical, we're not even sure if this will work issue, but Lauren, you're here with us today. Thank you and welcome. You've got the issue 3293, exposed file name filter for the media library dialog. Would you be willing to give us an update?
Yeah, I actually didn't listen to last week's meeting, so I don't know how deeply it got discussed, but the gist of it is, in a nutshell, it works on file fields, but it doesn't work in the CK editor pop-up. And as far as I can tell, this is just speculation, but when it pops up in the CK editor modal, it's like a form within a form. So the exposed form is actually inside of the submit form for the modal. And I think that causes problems. And I'm not sure how to go about fixing that. So when you submit the file name filter, it submits it to the CK editor form instead of to the views exposed filter form.
Interesting. Yeah, that sounds problematic. Interesting. I wonder, yeah, what we should do there. Okay. Well, thanks for diving into that and figuring out that context of why that problem is occurring. Also very interesting that it only happens in CK editor and not in file and image fields. So very interesting.
That reminds me an issue which we had recently and which is fixed, where in the only text mode of CK editor, when it was in a modal, it wasn't saved. Do you remember it? It was also kind of tricky, a JavaScript issue.
Was it the one where you switched to source mode and then it
Yeah.
saved?
Yeah, I remember that issue.
So, and it reminds me it could be a similar problem. So don't know if it's worth to have a look at the other issue, how it was fixed.
Yeah, good suggestion. That was fixed. I can't remember. I think I fixed it, but I can't remember anything about it.
I think it was with 117 around that. So like around summer time for our hemisphere.
Yeah, let's keep going on. Thanks, Lauren, for giving us the update there. Let's see. Adding a setting to the menu block for changing the breakpoint at which the menu turns into hamburger mode is issue 4663. BW Panda is the advocate for that one. And there's been several reviews very recently as activists today. Jen and Indigozilla both posted some reviews, and BW Panda posted some responses and updated the pull request. I think that there's the ongoing discussion of is the change backwards compatible and safe to include or not. Jen, do you want to say anything about that issue since you are the one that have looked at it most recently from those present?
I haven't looked at it since Peter's last change, but the version I looked at before that was going to break all existing sites that had overridden the style sheet. And so he's figured out a way to change it. It had like a fundamental rewrite of how a style sheet was added, which is super dangerous to do in a release. And I think he's found a way to rework it so that it's going to be less likely to break all the current sites. So I'll have a look at
Yeah,
that.
I haven't looked at it since he made those changes either. So same in the same boat. He's got something new. We'll take a look at it. Next up, simple change. Tim, you're the advocate for changing the name of the full HTML text format to raw HTML, issue 4499. Any updates? Muted.
Muted.
Still losing where, okay.
Oh, there you go.
Yep. No, there. My message from last week, no update this week, still is good.
Okay, thanks, Tim. And lastly, we in the 118 milestone, we have advanced caching, such as adding support for cache tags and a dynamic max age cache header, issue 4127. Josef is the advocate for that one, currently needs work. I don't think that there's been any updates in the issue itself. That's it for the 118 list. Do you guys have anything you'd like to mention for 118 before we move on to initiatives? Okay. We've got 2 active initiatives. Initiatives are long-term goals that might not necessarily be in one single release. And there's 2 of them right now. The Ready to Wear initiative to make it so that you can deploy themes without doing any custom coding. That's Luke McCormick's issue, or he's the initiative lead on that, but he's not present today. The other issue that we have is telemetry. Telemetry, well, I don't even need to summarize it, but Tim, I think you've taken that over from Jeff.
Yep.
Are there any updates on telemetry this week?
Not really. I'll just say that the current status is really in testing stage. So if anybody is able to help to get in and look at that and test it, I think we also have to, or we talked about creating some sort of follow-up or separate issues, but we need to really test what we've done so far. And I'm trying to get a good development site set up for that. And yeah, and I've got to pass the roadblocks. It's just finishing the process, finding the time. That's all.
And we have some obvious enhancements that are needed in the module to make it so that we can enable and disable the collection of data on a per project basis. Because initially we want to make it so that we're only collecting data for core, and any data that gets sent to backdropcms.org from any other purpose or anything that's not supposed to be saved, that we don't save arbitrary data. We only save the data that we're expecting.
Yep.
So that's it.
Can you, on the
Peter?
telemetry, I actually have a question on that. It just kind of popped in my head last night. Is that mainly just to collect arbitrary information?
Right. Yeah, it can collect arbitrary information, and the current implementation creates a hook that the telemetry module itself implements its own hook that collects the basic information of your PHP version, your MySQL version, and I think your web server, something like that. So it just collects those very basic 3 things, but it has the capability to collect anything. And so we want to make sure that the data, because backdropcms.org is going to store the data that it's sent, we want to make sure that on the server side that we only store the stuff that we're expecting. And that way, if a contrib module were to implement this hook right now, it would be sending us data, but we wouldn't be storing it, because we want to have some kind of process around making sure that the data that they're collecting is acceptable from privacy standpoint and all those things. But there's nothing stopping any contrib module from doing any kind of telemetry or check-ins to any arbitrary server right now. But we don't want that arbitrary data to become a problem on our side, that if we start collecting personal information that we didn't know about, then we could cause legal problems, compatibility with safe harbor laws and stuff like that.
Well, the question that I kind of had on that, is it worth it to try and collect a list of, for example, PHP errors, start out with core and then maybe extend that into contribs? But it's might be a good tool for you guys where you know, that 100 sites out there are all getting the same error, but nobody's actually reporting the error back into the issue queue. And so, yeah, it's kind of like, why are we getting all of these errors? What is this? Maybe we need to look into this and try and figure out why this error keeps popping up on all of these sites. But I don't know if that kind of goes back into, like you were talking about with privacy, or if that's going to end up generating so much data that, you know, your guys' hosting can't handle it right now, type of thing. But I think it might be worth kind of possibly looking into adding that type of a deal in the future. And then you can start to kind of pinpoint and see, hey, there's commonality over here. We might want to pay attention.
Yeah.
So,
That's it.
so
Go ahead.
the whole telemetry thing, even this was an old pet peeve of mine that started back in the Drupal days, and the original issue was in Drupal.org. Because there were arbitrarily decisions being made, like some person would come and say, hey, nobody's using that feature, let's remove it. But that they didn't have hard data to support that. So the telemetry thing started off of that. It would serve as a means for us to make decisions when it comes to difficult decisions that might upset the community, and we need hard data to combine it. But that's an interesting idea because I think there's a module that actually does that. So if there's a new release that goes out, it sort of like collects similar error messages, and then it triggers, like if there's above a certain limit, it sort of like triggers alerts. But telemetry wasn't built for that in mind, with that in mind, I should say.
Yep. Good summary there, Gregory. That's not really like solving problems that might be occurring. It's like getting us more data so that we can make decisions.
Yeah. By the way,
Yeah.
Peter has joined, so maybe we could give him a chance to give us an update on the breakpoint thing if he wants to. Peter, hello.
Hi. So
Yeah,
this
Peter,
is
if you're in. Oh, go ahead.
So this is my breakpoint module thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you want to give us an update on 4663, the breakpoint for menu blocks. Yeah.
Yeah. So Jen did some testing and found a way that it does break existing sites if they override something. So she gave steps to reproduce that. I was able to reproduce it. I found and fixed the problem, and then updated the pull request. And so now it's back to needing review and testing just to make sure it's all good again. It doesn't need any, it doesn't break any existing sites is what we're trying to fix at the moment. So yeah, just review and testing needed for that.
Cool.
All right. Yep. Sounds great. All right. That does it for everything we've got in the agenda. It's a little past the hour, but if we have any general questions or discussion items, we could probably put one or two. Do you guys have anything you guys would like to bring up?
Just to mention that at some point there was a documentation initiative, or sort of like, it's not an official initiative, but it was discussion about it becoming an initiative, because documentation is an ongoing live thing. It's not officially in the agenda, but we said at some point when more people have more time and resources, then we'll start working, putting some more effort to it.
I think Joe might have come to the meeting with some items too. I just want to mention that. Go ahead, Jen or Phil.
I've got kind of a brain fart question for you guys. I don't even know. I think it would be possible to do this. I don't know the ramifications of doing this from a coding standpoint, though. And I think the idea actually came when I started playing around with Drupal 8 in the early days. And the idea was to move a lot of the hard-coded fields out of being hard-coded into actual fieldable fields. So for example, the URL, turn the URL to be a fieldable field, so that if you want to add a URL to a block and then have an actual URL point specifically to that block, you can, or to a paragraph, or to really any entity. Some of the things I think maybe the author field, maybe that could stay hard coded, or some still stay hard coded. But try to basically remove some of the hard coded fields, make the entire platform more flexible in how you want to actually set things up. I know the whole node and content type, that was kind of, Drupal, the original foundation of Drupal, and blocks were kind of the original foundation. Then Drupal 7 came along and it turned into entities. And I don't know, I just kind of felt like we were pigeonholed with the way all of the content was driven with the nodes and everything else. And it's like, why not turn a block into a actual page, or something with an actual URL? So you'd still have the separation of your backend URL, the system URL, but then you could also convert other entities, things of that nature. Comment fields would be another example. Maybe I want to add a comment field to a block or something of that nature. So again, I know there's a lot of backend stuff I'm just flat out not aware of that may not make that idea possible, but I just kind of want to throw it out and see what your guys' thoughts were.
Yeah, so we looked at that a lot really early in the Backdrop lifecycle, and we decided that for Backdrop, rather than turning every other entity into a node, we were just going to use a node for that purpose. So we included what was a module called Rabbit Hole in Drupal 7 that allows you to take nodes and remove the URL for them and make them, like we call them, pageless nodes, so that you can have a node type called block if you wanted, that would have comments and all the other, publishing options and translation, everything the same way a node does. So you can use Node for all of that stuff. And I think one of the main reasons we decided to go that way is because there's so much support in Contrib for nodes. So all of the things that you might want to do to nodes, you might want to do to all those node-like things also, that it just made more sense to use all the things that we knew would work, rather than trying to create a new entity for a block that maybe doesn't have translation or doesn't have, all of the stuff that already works on nodes.
Okay.
So
Backwards compatibility reasons then. Okay.
And just like complexity. I think people, they'll get their head around like every piece of content is a node, even if sometimes the content is placed like a block, or sometimes it has a page. And conceptually, it just made more sense. But yeah, I mean, we're sort of in this world where in Drupal 6, node was content, and then Drupal 8 entity is content. And we're kind of in the middle where we have like entity content and node content, and blocks aren't entities, but other things are fieldable. So yeah, I mean, it's a little bit sort of up to the site architect to decide how to solve that problem on any site. But we did put Rabbit Hole in core with the hopes that the standard would be that nodes would be content, and anything that you need for content can apply to any node type, regardless of how you treat it. Like it could be a slide in a slideshow. It doesn't have a page on its own, but it's got fields and it's got translation, it's got comments if you want them.
By the way, sorry, go ahead, Olaf.
Yeah, by the way, I often thought about it, so about the implementation of Rabbit Hole in core, and I use it also a lot, but I think there are not many people aware of it. And so once I had the idea, if we maybe ship Backdrop with a third content type, a block-like one, to make people aware of these really huge possibilities of that. So
a really often used solution, implementation of that is slides and slideshows. So people want to create slide blocks, I would say, but they don't want people to necessarily be able to access each individual slide. I'm not sure if it's a core thing, but I see where you're going with that, Olaf.
Yeah, I could see that being really valuable in core, especially if we had a core slideshow library, because then we could give them.
It's something that people request a lot. A lot. So, yeah. So, by the way, there's for Phil's benefit, there's a forum topic that was started by me. It was sort of like a rhetorical question thingy, with titled "What can people do in Drupal 8 and 9 with fieldable blocks, which is not possible in Backdrop?" And then everyone jumped and said, "Oh, you know what? The Rabbit Hole solution is so much easier." And it's like, I don't know what triggered that question that I had. Maybe I was watching a tutorial on something like really old that was implementing that, and I said, why aren't we doing that? And then I tried playing as well, and I figured out that we can do pretty much whatever that tutorial was doing without having those features. So yeah, I'll provide a link to that blog post, because there's other people that chimed in and it's like useful. So for your benefit, Phil, I just thought put a thing in the Zoom chat here.
Okay.
Maybe you want to add your thoughts there to that.
The only other thing I was going to bring up, I put that issue out there for Brotley. At this point in time, that sent me down a rabbit hole of information that I just was not prepared for in dealing with Brotley. And I would honestly say at this point, when you got time to mess with it and look into it, mess with it then. I don't think that's anything that we need to try and deal with right now. You guys have enough on your plate. But I think that at some point down the road, I think it would be worth trying to look into using that. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Brotley. It's basically the new format for gzip. Google came out with it 2013. It compresses most of your stuff, give or take, by about 5% more than what gzip does. So there is an issue we're going to get committed that will fix a problem that if Brotley is enabled, for example, mod Brotley is enabled for Apache, that it causes problems. I think we'll be getting that put in pretty quickly to resolve that, which is good. But as far as doing it on the fly, doing a pre-compress, there's going to be a lot of work involved to try and pre-compress. And I think right now it's not even worth looking into doing pre-compress on using Brotley. So maybe down the road, somebody can come up with an easier way. But right now, I think it's going to be too complicated to even try and mess with.
Yeah, I saw that issue, and then backporting the fix that prevents that error, which sounds that it might become a more frequent than we would like thing situation. I think that we should do that. The rest of it sounds like a little bit of work. And also, I think that you raised that ticket a few days ago, and then some people raised pull requests in the GovCMS repo and started implementing it. And I was like, what's up with that commotion about Brotley? So I guess Google are probably pushing for it. And
if you do some Google searches for Brotley, a lot of big key players, Cloudflare, KeyCDN, there's a lot of big companies that they're touting it, talking about the benefits. I mean, it's been around for quite a while now already. But unfortunately, the ease of use, for example, I use cPanel for my hosting platform. I have to actually try to go download a PHP extension, get that installed in cPanel, so it's not for the faint of heart to actually get the binaries to get everything on the server in order to do the pre-compress. So I think until that becomes more popular, or there's a way of doing that without needing third-party binaries or something, I don't even think it could be done. I think you've got to have either a PHP extension or be able to have access to the binaries to make it work. So we can kind of put that issue as far as including the pre-compressed side of the Brotley. We can put that on the back burner. So sorry for, I guess, bringing up kind of a weird little issue there. I'll try to refrain from that in the future.
No, don't. Just we have other issues long-standing there that are like, we don't mind having things as a to-do list. It's just go in the backlog.
Right, getting priorities right. Yeah, so to me, it's not a high priority. There's a lot more involved than what I originally thought. So I'm looking at it now going, no, don't put it as a high priority.
Cool. Well, we're past time. I think let's maybe wrap it up for this week. Thank you guys all for joining. It's exciting to see the different crews coming in, people updating on their initiatives or updating on their advocated issues. It's highly appreciated when you guys are present for the meetings. And thank you guys. All right. It's a great week. We got out 117.2, maybe a little celebration. Yay, another backdrop release at the door. And we'll keep on rolling along. We'll see you guys on the internet, on the issue queue, and next week on the video.
I just really want to say thank you, Tim and Peter, for all of your work on 117.2, because you guys were great.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks everybody. Bye.
Bye.